All right. Hello, everybody. It's good to see you. Have you ever been driving down a country road at night and seen the glowing eyes of some animal? And the glow you see is a reflection of light off a layer of special tissue in that eye called the tapetum lucidum. It's Latin for bright tapestry. And this tissue reflects visible light back through the retina, enabling animals to see in low light situations. See, they have natural night vision. And they say that a dog can see about 4 times better than a human at night, and a cat about 16 times that of a human at night. An owl can spot a stationary mouse at 100 yards in a pitch black field on the darkest of night. And some animals even have the ability to see into the ultraviolet spectrum of light. And some even into the thermal spectrum of light. And a leaf-tailed gecko can see 350 times better than we do at night. 350 times better. And I'll give you pictures of those on the web. See, night vision scopes are used by our military, law enforcement, and sportsmen, and they collect available light and they amplify it into that device. And a typical scope will allow a person to see a man at 200 feet on a cloudy, moonless night. So remember that darkness of any type is simply an absence of light. See, light is always the answer to darkness. Focus your light and locate your abundance. And this will basically be the theme of the day here. See, nocturnal animals have that special light-enhancing tissue that's not found in humans. And God has given us something better. And we can see through darkness that no keen-eyed nocturnal animal can begin to visualize. And there's a night vision device that every Christian has been given, but very few utilize. And the reason we don't have our need met, physically, mentally, spiritually, financially, is because we expect to see in darkness without adding any light. See, adding light is an important step. We need night vision. If God's already supplied our need, which He has, if He's already given us the help, by His stripes we're already healed, yet we don't have the healing, we don't have the abundance, somehow we're not seeing in the darkness of this world. And the record we're going to cover today will show you how one man got it. One man figured it out, and he was able to teach others. Quote, "Truth will ultimately prevail where there is pains to bring it to light." End of quote. George Washington. See, if God promised us all sufficiency in all things, to have all our needs supplied, He's promised that we've already been healed, why do we still see lack? Let's learn how to focus our light in this dark world so that we too can locate our blessings. Some people figure it out, especially on the financial end. See, one of the richest, most amazing men who ever lived said, "Oh, that I were in past months, as in the days when God preserved me, when His candle shined upon my head, and when by His light I walked through darkness." That was Job. I love that. By His light I walked through darkness. I mean, this guy, Job, was one of the guys, he had walked with the light of God, that candle that was on his head, so to speak, that lamp. And he saw things nobody else saw. And he acquired incredible abundance, had a great family. But then he started focusing on the darkness. And he lost everything. Then he regained his focus of light. He gathered the light again, and he ended up with twice as much as he had before. Same can happen with us. And if we've never learned how to grab it, then now's the time. See, Job prospered unbelievably when he walked in the light of God's love, but he lost everything when he focused on darkness. Here's a quote from Plato. We can easily forgive a child who is afraid of the dark. The real tragedy in life is when men are afraid of the light. End of quote. And some are. See, as we learn to see in the dark via our gift of Holy Spirit power, we're going to find our promised help. As we learn to utilize our spiritual night vision by accumulating and focusing the light of God, we will be able to locate our abundance. Now, this isn't just talk, folks. This works. And today we're going to study a record that shows how the Spirit of God allowed a man with the Spirit of God to see through darkness with great clarity. So go to 2 Kings chapter 6. And we're going to look at our night vision magnifier. 2 Kings chapter 6, verse 8 we'll start in. Then the king of Syria warred against Israel, and took counsel with his servants, saying, in such and such a place shall be my camp. Now he warred with Israel. Now is war usually nice? Is it a game? No. People are dying. They're getting hurt. They're getting sliced, chopped, beat, shot, pummeled, strangled. Not pretty. He warred against Israel. And he goes, I'm going to build my camp at such and such a spot. Verse 9, and the man of God sent unto the king of Israel, saying, beware, thou shalt not pass such a place, for hither the Syrians are come down. If you go this way, the way you're planning on going, you will be ambushed and killed. And the king of Israel sent to the place which the man of God told him and warned him of, and saved himself there, not once nor twice. What does that mean? Many times. This king learned that this man of God saw things that he couldn't figure out. Now, most kings were warriors in those days. They went to battle. Sometimes they were the toughest motor scooter. Mm-hmm. And so this guy learned to listen to this prophet. And time after time, Israel actually listened to that prophet. Elisha is his name. And it amazes me that a person in a position of power, of great power, like a king, listens to anybody outside their inner circle. Most people don't listen to anybody anyway. And this king had been saved. His people had been protected time and time and time again because of a man who knew how to listen to the Spirit of God, a man who had figured out how to see in the dark and to walk with power. Verse 11. Therefore the heart of the king of Syria was sore troubled for this thing. He was sore troubled. And he called his servants as his inner circle. And he said unto them, will ye not show me which of us is for the king of Israel? Who's the spy? Who's the traitor? Who wouldn't think that? He keeps going where he knows they're going to be, and then they're not there. Why? See, this enemy king, this warrior from Syria, was trying to take over all or part of Israel. He thought it was up for grabs. Thought he could do it or he wouldn't be there. He thought he had a traitor spy in his inner circle of confidants. See, his best intelligence was being thwarted time and time again. He would send his army in for that ambush, for that attack against the king of Israel, and they would escape. Here's a quote. There's no sadder sight than a young pessimist. Mark Twain. Verse 12. And one of his servants said, he's asking these questions. One of his servants said, "None, my lord, O king, but Elisha the prophet that's in Israel telleth the king of Israel the words that thou speakest in thy bedchamber." Pretty graphic. He says, I don't care what you say or where you say it. That man of God he's telling the king what you're saying, which is pretty astute. And he said, "Go spy where he is. Be sneaky, that I may send and fetch him. I want him." And it was told him, saying, "Behold, he's in Dothan." Now, the Syrian servant to his king knew that Elisha was capable, what Elisha was capable of, which is, it amazes me that he was aware of another country's man of God. And he knew Elisha had access to hidden information. He knew Elisha wore a special set of night vision goggles. God sees, he hears, and he directs. See, God is everywhere present. Now think about that for a minute. God hears everybody's prayer, Christian, non-Christian. God hears every word, every prayer, every conversation by everybody. If he only heard the prayers of Christians, would he have ever heard Cornelius's prayer in Acts 10? No. Could he have heard your prayer when you cried out to God before you got saved?
Yeah.
Well, he couldn't if he only heard Christians' prayers. God hears everybody's prayers. He hears everything. He's aware of everything. And he can tell you, he can direct you to your abundance. That's part of the point of this. He can direct you to your health. That's the point of this. I don't care how bad you've been, even that one thing that you did. God hears your prayer. God can show you what you need to know so you can live, so that you can thrive, so that you can excel. And that's the lesson right here. Here's a quote by Andre Gide. Quote, "Man cannot discover new oceans unless he has the courage to lose sight of the shore." It's hard to let go, folks. It's an old way of thinking. Remember, if you keep doing things the same way over and over, you'll never find change. We can't change. If you don't like your situation, we have to do something different. I remember when I lived in Nebraska, I came home from work at lunch one time and it snowed during that hour off. And when I was going back to work, I was running a little bit late and I didn't want to scrape all the whole windshield off. So I just scraped one line, just like this, so I could just see out the front. Just one little swath on the windshield. And it was only 1 mile back to work. Had a belly full of soup or whatever I had, and I was ready to go. Had to work out in the cold anyway. So I hopped into my mustard yellow Chevy pickup truck and I started driving. And it had snowed so much in that 1 hour that you couldn't see where the street was or where the yards were anymore. It was just like a field, it seemed like. So I backed out and went down what I thought was a street and kept going. Then I couldn't tell where the left was. So I just thought, this is it. And so I turned left and boom, 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 boom. And I went over this big old curb up into somebody's yard. It was a huge, huge Nebraska corner yard. At the same second I went boom, boom over that curb, this semi-tractor trailer going about 90 miles an hour was just past that spot that I would have been in, blinded because I didn't wipe off the windows, and it would have just crushed me. I'd never seen something go that fast. But God saved me with just one little thought. Turn left. Or I wouldn't be here today. There's no way. You know, that 10 feet too soon saved my life. Didn't hurt their yard any. It was frozen solid anyway, so it didn't matter. See, God gently said, turn left, and I turned. And that turned out to be the right road, even though it was just a little more bumpy. And see, God will save all of our lives. You know, God will save your financial life. Remember the two most common prayers, health and finance. Everybody prays for that almost every day. Every religion, every human on earth, they're praying for that stuff. You know, God will even save your finances. He'll save your health. Let's learn to open our spiritual eyes. Put on our night vision spiritually. And stop getting so used to stumbling around in this dark old world. Now I need to tell you about the city of Dothan. I like to be able to visualize what these places were. So Dothan, it's an ancient city in Israel, and it means two wells. And at the time of 2 Kings 6 that we began to read, that's about 800 BC. And Dothan was a heavily fortified city with thick protective walls. And it had already been inhabited for over 2,000 years by that time. 2,000 years! See, Dothan dates back to 3000 BC. So it's an old city. And a lot can happen in 2,000 years. And from our perspective, looking back, 2,000 years, Jesus Christ is walking the earth. How much has happened? Gosh, look what happens in 20 days now. You get a new cell phone. By the time you walk out that store, there's a new model that you're looking at. You know, you can't keep up. It's hard to. Well, it's always changed. There's always been moving. See, every time Dothan was taken over by another civilization, they would tear down the mud brick walls and their buildings, and they would build a newer, stronger fortress on top of the rubble. And over centuries, an old city will grow, and it'll keep getting higher and higher and higher in elevation. And today, Dothan is just an archaeological site, and it's called Tel Dothan, T-E-L-L. And a tell is a man-made mound caused by building a city on top of a destroyed city, on top of a destroyed city, on top of a destroyed city. It's just layers and layers and layers and layers of humanity. The word tell means it tells a story. And the first to excavate Dothan was J.P. Free. He was an archaeologist who spent 9 years there beginning in 1953. It's only mentioned twice in the Bible. And the first time it's mentioned was about 2000 BC, well over 1,000 years before this record. And that was in Genesis 37, which we're not going to turn to, but it's also mentioned in the inscriptions of the Egyptian king Thutmose III in 1490 to 1436 BC. And it was one of the Palestinian towns in which the Egyptians demanded tribute. So Egypt owned what would be called Israel at one time. Isn't that something? Which is about the time that a man named Joseph was in Egypt. So sort of crazy. And that the first mention of Dothan is when Jacob sent his youngest son named Joseph to go find his brothers to see how they were doing. And there's great grassland. There's still grassland around Dothan, the Dothan Tell. And so they had their herds and they were shepherding their herds around Dothan at that time. Well, this kid Joseph shows up. They're jealous of him because dad really favors this young kid. Plus, he already is learning how to walk with spiritual power. He's showing signs of being a man of God, and they hated him for it. So they throw him in a pit. Now, this is the town of two wells. And And so, and then when a caravan of Ishmaelites comes through Dothan, because it's on a trade route, it's heading south toward Egypt, they sell their little brother to these Ishmaelites, and they take him and sell him to somebody in Egypt. And they told their dad that he had been eaten by a wild animal. And they took his little coat of many colors or whatever and showed Dad that stuff. So that's the story. That's the first time it's ever mentioned there. See, but Joseph grew up. He never lost sight of who God had made him, and he saved his family as well as all the Hebrew people. Because he never lost sight. He kept the night vision goggles on. Quote, each man is good in his sight. It is not necessary for eagles to be crows. End of quote. Sitting Bull. You know, be who you were designed to be. Be who you were designed to be. Sneaking up on the one who sees. Verse 14. Therefore sent he thither horses and chariots, a great host, a whole bunch of men, and they came by night. And they compassed the city about. Now remember, Dothan is on a mound. Because it's just a mound of city, layers and layers of cities. So it got higher and higher and higher, maybe 30, 40 feet in the air this city is. So this king of Syria, he goes around Dothan, has his chariots and his host of army around this, snuck him in at night. He wanted to get to this man of God, because he knew that was the key to him. The man of God was the key to him killing the king of Israel, so he could take over Israel. So he's smart enough to know that. So the army of Syria snuck out at night, surrounded the elevated city of Dothan, and hoping nobody would notice. But God sees. God sees everything. It's funny how he thought he'd get away with this time. And verse 15, and when the servant of the man of God was risen early, got up early in the morning and gone forth, he went outside the city, prior to do his business. Behold, a host compassed the city, both with horses and chariots. And his servant said unto him, so he runs back in. He looks out and he sees an army surrounding Dothan. He might walk to the other side. They're there. Everywhere he looks, they're surrounded. He sees a campfire. Here's the horses. The people are getting, the soldiers are getting ready for an attack. And so he runs back in. And he said, and the servant said unto him, Alas, master, how shall we do? What are we going to do? We're surrounded. Now that would sort of be freaky, really. If you're in a city and now you're surrounded by an enemy that wants to take your country over. I mean, I don't even know how to imagine that. Some of you guys who are in the military know what it's like to be on the other side of that. But imagine being on the receiving side. You know, Paul Brunton said, worry is spiritual short sight. Worry is spiritual short sight. So this guy says, what are we going to do, master? What are we going to do? Verse 16. See the servant, this is really the gift of sight here. The servant of the man of God saw only through his physical eyes. Elijah saw with spiritual night vision. You can too. Verse 16, and he answered, Fear not, for they that be with us are more than they that be with them. Okay, this guy's going, it's just me and you here. Couple of vendors in Dothan. It's an old city. The walls are crumbling. They're made with clay. And they were mud brick walls is what they were. Now we're surrounded by an army with chariots. The tanks of the day. be spooky. They're waiting for light. And he said, hey, there's more with us than with them. And Elisha prayed and said, Lord, I pray thee, open his eyes. Show this young man that he may see. And the Lord opened the eyes of the young man. It's amazing. This kid had to have had the Spirit of God somehow. There was a whole group of prophets. If you read early, the first 6 verses in this chapter, and you'll see how he was training these people to be prophets, which means the Spirit of God can be trained. You can train people how to operate. And so this is one of the young men. And he said, oh, Lord, open his eyes so that he can see. And the Lord opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw, and behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire round about Elisha. Now, I don't know if it was the mountain, the hill. See, Samaria. This is the hill country of Samaria, and there's hills all over. So either it's possible either what he saw was all in Dothan on that hill, all these chariots and angels, people just glowing, around Elisha, or God's army, so to speak, had surrounded, was just covering the hills all around, and there's so many more of them than the few campfires of the enemy Syrians. Whichever, it doesn't matter, or both. See, learn to see what usually goes unnoticed. The man of God saw what usually goes unnoticed. He taught the youth how to see things the same. Elisha was well aware of God's constant care, protection, and supply, and wanted to communicate this to his helper. He just knew it. He goes, come on, God, now show this kid. This guy, imagine the attitude. He just casually. He knew that there was more protecting him than the physical attack that was about to happen. What if we had that attitude? What about health? Just think of the largest team of angelic doctors in their white spiritual lab coats that know everything about you. If you're thinking health, what about finances? The shiniest white business suits and the most crisp haircut and the most shiny pocket protectors or whatever the greatest financiers of the universe surrounding you, filling the voids. It's something. Learn to see what usually goes unnoticed. Do you think God will do less for you? Do you think he can open your eyes? He can, folks. And he does. You're surrounded by God's light. You're surrounded by God's love. You're surrounded by his protection. You're surrounded by God's abundance. It's already laid out there. It's all there. We just have been trained by this world to put their blinders on and just go the way of the world. And that's why we don't see it. It's out there. We're set. We're surrounded. Do we see it? Do you see it? There's still chariots of fire. There's still angelic beings. We still have Christ Jesus to stand for and to protect us and to guide us. It's not an elusive term. He's a real being doing something. It's like where God says, I am what I am. You see, and some people translate that, I will be what you need me to be. Or as I studied it out, it simply means I exist for you. God exists for us. God will be exactly what we need him to be at the exact moment we need him to be that. Health, finances, whatever. Protection. We just have to learn to see and believe. It's there for us. It's right next to us. He exists for us. Do you see it? Do you really see it? Do you just think of all the hills that are around Colorado Springs. Imagine them just covered with chariots of fire and angelic beings. They are. There's more for us than there is against us. I mean, 2/3, right? Yep. 2/3, 1/3 ratio. There's more. I mean, that's the truth that he said. If 1/3 of the angels fell and 2/3 didn't, you got 2/3 on your side. It's abundance. We can have abundance because we have an abundance of help. Job looked at the darkness and lost. Then he regained his night vision, regained his light, and everything turned out all right. I mean, God will be what we need him to be. We just have to see and believe. And verse 18. So we've got to learn to see what usually goes unnoticed. Verse 18. And when they came down to him, Elisha prayed unto the Lord and said, and smite the people, I pray thee, with blindness. And he smote them with blindness according to the word of Elisha. Okay, now these people are all the people, these enemy people. So now they can't see. I was in a house yesterday doing a job, and the son, when he was born, the doctor told the family that he would live for 2 hours. 37 years later, this kid's still living with his parents, but he's blind. And so they have everything. The house is simple, and they have it set up where he can get around. He has a special space for chair. I mean, it was really well done, pleasant, but they figured out how to set up the house so that the blind person could walk. Well, the world is set up so that blind Christians can get by and think they're living just fine. Verse 18. And they came down to him. Elisha prayed unto the Lord, smite the people, pray thee with blindness. And he smote them with blindness according to the word of Elisha. And Elisha said unto them, this is not the way, neither is this the city. Now he's talking to like the king of Syria. Okay, you're in the wrong city, folks. They can't see anymore anyway. Follow me and I'll bring you to the man whom you seek. But he led them to Samaria. Samaria was 12 miles south of Dothan. At 12 miles, what does it take? 2 hours to walk 12 miles? What would it take for a whole army to move 12 miles?
4 hours, 3 hours.
Yeah, a few hours, couple hours, 3, 4, whatever. I mean, it would be, and plus you're blind, right? People stumbling, tripping, hanging on to each other. Camels, donkeys, Who drove the chariots? Probably Israelites, or they might have left them there. It doesn't say. Vision is the art of seeing what's invisible to others. Jonathan Swift. Historians think Samaria was built because it was a great area for the growth and production of olive oil and wine. Plus, it was an easily defensible plateau. So Samaria was actually on a plateau so they could see it around all sides of it. So Samaria was a highly defensible city. But Samaria was a new city at this time. Verse 20. And it came to pass when they were coming to Samaria that Elisha said, Lord, open the eyes of these men that they may see. And the Lord opened their eyes. And they saw. And behold, they were in the midst of Samaria. How weird would that be? You're blind and you're holding on to each other's shoulders. Camels and donkeys following, walk 12 miles with this one guy leading you. Come on, guys, come on. A little bit more, few more steps, 12 miles later. Now they know they're walking into a city. They still can't, they hear people talking. Imagine what that city would be like with this enemy army getting led in by a prophet. What would that city think? You know, they knew they were deep in enemy territory, and now they're trapped in the fortress. This is where the king lived. Samaria was the capital of Israel at that time. Isn't that amazing? And now they're in the middle of it. See like the blind. Helen Keller said, walking with a friend in the dark is better than walking alone in the light. In one summer, I visited some people at an RV campground, and the sun was dipping low in the sky, and I saw a woman having trouble backing her trailer into her paid spot. And so I tapped on her window and asked if she'd like me to help her. And I opened the front door for her. She stepped out of her vehicle, and I sat down in her warmed seat, and I adjusted the mirrors, and I noticed a passenger seat next to me, there was a man, and I thought to myself, why the heck isn't this guy backing this vehicle? You know, why do I have to do this? And then I looked down at his feet and saw a German Shepherd with one of those guide dog harnesses on it. The man was blind. And so I maneuvered the trailer into position, and I put it in park, and before I could get out of the car, this guy jumped out of that ride and ran to the trailer. He didn't walk. And then he reached he opened the storage compartment, turned the little knob, opened it up, and took out these chocks, and he put it on both sets of wheels. And so the thing wouldn't move. And then he started cranking down the tongue wheel and popped the hitch off the trailer. And then he slapped on the side of the vehicle and motioned for me to pull ahead 1 foot, and he held his hands about a foot apart. And so I did what he said. I pulled the car ahead a foot and turned it off and got out. And then this guy, he started just moving around that trailer so skillfully that I forgot that he was blind. He started pulling luggage out of the car and stacking it in strategic piles on the ground. He started pulling things out of the trailer and getting things set up, hoses and electrical cords, and boom, 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 boom. I'm watching this guy, and it was really starting to get dark now. And I said, and yes, I said this. I said, we better hurry. In a few minutes, it's going to be pitch black, and we're not going to be able to see a thing. Well, this guy looked in my direction. At least I thought he was looking. And he smiled, and he said, we wouldn't want to get caught in the dark, would we? I felt a little bit shy at that point. You know, I got schooled that day. Learned a big lesson. And I saw a man who was able to function without the use of his eyes so well that I could not tell that he was blind. Most of mankind, including Christianity, has grown so accustomed to living and functioning in darkness that they hardly recognize the light of God anymore. See, people can live in darkness and look like they're living like a spiritually sighted person. Sort of fake it till you make it. You know, what's the point of being a Christian if you can live as well and not be a Christian? What's the point? How much different do we live really than everybody else? See, it's time to utilize our night vision capabilities. On the lighter side, Muhammad Ali once said, I'm so fast that last night I turned off the light switch in my hotel room and was in bed before the room was dark. That's how he thought of himself. You know, I don't know about that, but let's learn to use our spiritual night vision so that we can see in any darkness and find the health and wealth that God's already laid out for us. And I'm going to reiterate, it's already been given, folks. The reason we don't see it is because we live in a partial blindness called the world. It's already there. What blinds us binds us. Verse 21. And the king of Israel said unto Elisha, when we saw, this is the king of Israel, not Syria now. when he saw them. He saw this army hand-delivered to him. I mean, you read about these Medal of Honor guys, how they captured 12 or 20 Nazis or something like that. They did amazing things. This guy brought a whole army in, single-handedly. Watch this. And when the king of Israel, who also was a warrior king, he was a tough moto scooter. He said, "My father," that's a term of respect, "shall I smite them? Shall I kill them? Shall I smite them? Shall I smite them?" He says it twice. See, and this was the perfect opportunity for them to annihilate this enemy, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Perfect opportunity. Look how God worked in this man of God. He just got surrounded by him. He knew people who had been killed by the Syrians. This is the enemy, folks. The enemy. But he knew how to see what God wanted him to see. Watch how God worked in this man of God. And this king's a powerful guy, wouldn't he be? King, powerful guy, yeah, in that day and time. But Elisha was not intimidated by the king. Don't be intimidated by anybody. Be who you were designed to be. And do what God called you to do, and you will be crazy successful. You'll have crazy health and an abundance you can hardly calculate. Why not? The only thing stopping us is darkness. Remember, once Satan's removed from the thing, then it's paradise. You can have a partial paradise if you can learn to remove Satan from the equation. That's night vision. Be able to see what you need to see no matter how dark it gets around you. Verse 22, and he answered, "Thou shalt not smite them." What? Mm-hmm. You're not going to kill them, king. Wouldst thou smite those whom thou hast taken captive with thy sword and with thy bow? Would you, if you had captured them, would you kill them? Of course, the ethics of Israel was different than the ethics of other armies, even at that time. It's different. He said, would you kill those who you took captive? He said, set bread and water before them that they may eat and drink and go to their master and go back home. Now it's like, okay, now we've got to feed an army. Who's going to pay? Who's paying? We've been putting a lot of money into fighting these fools all along. And now we have to feed these fools? See, the man who walked with God said, you're going to feed them and you're going to set them loose. You're not going to kill them. Does that make any sense for an army to do to an enemy that's repeatedly attacked them and wanted to take over your country? You're just going to let them go? See, they were in Israel at that time to take over Israel. Watch what happens. Verse 23. And he prepared great provisions for them. Here's what the king did. And when they had eaten and drunk, he sent them away. And they went to their master. So the bands of Syria came no more into the land of Israel. Now that's pretty cool. This is what God showed, at least in part, to this man of God. Treat him this way, there's going to be no more war for a long time from this group. Imagine. See, the life of a man consists not in seeing visions and dreaming dreams, but in active charity, in willing service. And that's Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Active charity and willing service. See, you listen to God, you win. You listen to God, you see what you need to see. You listen to God, you're going to go places that you never before ever thought of going. You listen to God and you'll receive things you didn't even know were available. You didn't even know you wanted or needed. See, night vision, that Spirit of God, can light your way to safety as well as saving your city. See and receive. See, God's our source of light. God supplies our night vision. A dog may be able to see 4 times better than us in the dark, and a cat 16 times better than we can see at night, but we can see what's totally hidden from normal human view. We can find our abundance. We can locate our health if we'll learn to utilize our night vision. By learning to utilize the power of the Holy Spirit that God placed in each of us, we can see what was once hidden. Learn to use your night vision. See, we're designed to see what we need to see so that we can receive what God has already given to us. See and receive. See, gather the light to gather your abundance. So let's utilize our night vision. God bless.